Bhagavatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Om Agyantamirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Janmadhyasa Yatonvaya Ditarata Sharate Shrabhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridhaya Radhikavaye Muhyanti Yatsurayah Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Hari Om Tat Sat Srimad Bhagavatam 6th Canto Chapter 4. So yesterday we heard about the sons of Prachina Barhi coming out of the waters after doing their austerities and seeing that the world had been overrun by trees. They became angry and began burning all the trees to the ground. And then the presiding deity of the moon, who is the nourisher of vegetation, he appeared and tried to pacify them in so many words, reminding them of their ancestry and the need to follow the path of their ancestors as Kshatriyas to give protection to all the citizenry, which includes the animals and the trees. Still being unpacified, finally, Soma offered one daughter of his, or kind of like stepdaughter, and the Prachetas become pacified. So what happened after that? The subject matter, of course, is Poshana specifically, and what's about to unfold, the Poshana, or protection of Indra, who will kill his guru, whose name is Vishrupa. Vishrupa's father's name was Twashta, and Twashta was one of the sons of the daughters of Daksha. So all of this is a backstory to the appearance of Daksha, who will then have daughters who will then, one of which will have Twashta, and Twashta will have Vishrupa. And so it's kind of like setting the scene sort of stuff. But Srimad Bhagavatam, I suppose, chooses to close in on this story because some very nice things come up, like the Hamsaguya prayers that we're about to hear about in this particular chapter. So we left off with the Soma giving the daughter to the Prachetas. So what happened after that? So this is verse number 16. I think that's where we left off. I'm just going to read up to where the prayers start because it's more or less straightforward. Not much commentary there. Shukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, after thus pacifying the Prachetas, Soma, the king of the moon, gave them the beautiful girl born of Pramlocha Apsara. The Prachetas all received Pramlocha's daughter, who had high, very beautiful hips, and married her according to the religious system. In the womb of that girl, the Prachetas all begot a son named Daksha, who filled the three worlds with the living entities. Don't even ask me how, because the Prachetas are 10 in number, I think. So how can all of them beget one child in the womb of Pramlocha? I have no idea, and that's not detailed in the commentaries anywhere, so don't ask about it. So Daksha is a progenitor, so he filled the three worlds with living entities. Shukadeva Goswami continued, please hear from me with great attention how Prajapati Daksha, who was very affectionate to his daughters, created different types of living entities through his semen and through his mind. So both Srila Prabhupada and Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur point out that this verse, Shukadeva Goswami specifically meant he generated progeny through his daughters, and kind of implicitly indicating that he had no sons. But he actually has lots of sons, and we're going to hear about that in the next chapter. He has a pair of 10,000 sons, and then later 1,000 sons, and they're all preached to by Narada Muni, and they renounce the kingdom. They renounce material sense gratification and take sannyas. And Daksha is not going to be very happy about that for obvious reasons. Finally realizing that Narada Muni was, like an unstoppable force. Daksha himself is an immovable object in terms of his determination, and Narada Muni is an unstoppable force. So what happens when an immovable object and an unstoppable force collide? There's an impasse. So there's an impasse, and finally, Daksha just capitulates and just said, whatever, I'm just going to have daughters next time. And Narada Muni won't preach to them. So in that way, he's able to do the work of populating the universe through his daughters. So that is brought out in the commentary to verse 18. Verse 19, with his mind, Prajapati Daksha first created all kinds of demigods, demons, human beings, birds, beasts, aquatics, and so on. So just as Lord Brahma generates so many living entities from his mind, it seems that other Prajapatis or progenitors also are able to generate living entities through the mind. So not exactly a process of evolution as is thought of in the modern secular world. So of course, it's a little hard to conceive of this, how someone can generate living entity through the mind. Of course, Srila Prabhupada says inconceivable simply means you can't do it. So just like if you see the World's Strongest Man competition, I've never really watched it, but I remember growing up and on occasion stumbling upon it on one of the cable channels. And you see these guys are moving trucks. They're these huge guys. They can move trucks. Of course, not very far, but they can move it. That itself is extraordinary. So it's for someone like me is inconceivable. If just to deadlift a couple 100 pounds, I'm overwhelmed. So see some guy moving a truck is inconceivable for me because I can't do it. So Prabhupada has mentioned this about inconceivability. So we cannot generate living entities through our mind. So it's inconceivable how it is possible. But it seems here that such a thing is there. And when you have more power in the higher position, such things are possible, it seems. Next verse. So, but when Prajapati Daksha saw that he was not properly generating all kinds of living entities, he approached the mountain, the Vindhya mountain range. And there he executed very difficult austerities. So near that mountain was a very holy place named Agamarshana. There, Prajapati Daksha executed ritualistic ceremonies and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, by engaging in great austerities to please him. My dear king, I shall fully explain to you the Hamsa Guhya prayers which were offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by Daksha, and I shall explain how the Lord was pleased with him for those prayers. So he wasn't doing the progenitor work very nicely in his estimation. So he goes to perform austerities to satisfy the personality of Godhead so that he may be empowered to do his particular work. He offers a prayer called the Hamsuguya, which is, Prabhupada says it's a shastric prayer. So he didn't compose it himself, but he is offering it to the Supreme Lord. As a sidebar, this is one of the angas of bhakti for the voice. You know how the different angas of bhakti pertain to different aspects of the body, the speech, the mind, and so on. So for the voice, there are 4 or 5 angas mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami. And one of them is to offer the stutis of scripture. And that is the difference between stuti and viknapti. So viknapti, which I've talked about many times, in these classes is one's own prayers to the Supreme Lord. Whereas stuti or stava, these are the prayers that are offered that are already there is shastra, and you taking those prayers and you're offering them in devotion to the Supreme Lord. So Daksha is performing this type of devotional service. So the prayers begin with verse 23, and I think we're only going to do two of them because that's kind of all that I was able to look at this morning. I guess there's a lot going on here. Let's see. Maybe the class will get over in like 3 minutes. So Sri Pajapati Uvacha Nama Paraya Vitatanubhutaye Gunatraya Bhasa Nimitta Bandave Adrishta Dhamne Gunatattva Buddhibhir Nivritta Mainaya Dhade Swayam Bhuve. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the illusory energy. Okay. Before reading that, I'll just say, so he's offering his obeisances, Namaha, Dhade Swayambhuve. So he's offering his obeisances to Swayambhuve. Swayambhuve means Swayambhuva means one who is self-generating or self-existent. In other words, not having any prior cause or any cause of his birth. Such a person is called as Swayambhuva. Of course, sometimes this term is used for Brahma, but he, of course, has a cause, the Supreme Lord. But because he didn't appear, kind of normally, which I guess means by father and mother, that's one normal way. And the other normal way means by the mind, as we're hearing here in the case of the progenitors. So he's sometimes referred to as Swayambhuva, but this name is primarily the name of the Lord, who is self-existing. This is also the meaning of the word Advaya. So we say that the reality is Advaya Gyan Tattva, right? Reality, Tattva is Advaya Gyan. So the word Advaya means non-dual. So this is the meaning of non-dual. The meaning of the word non-dual is that it is self-existing, that there is no reality that is similar or dissimilar, that is self-existing. This is the first meaning of the word Advaya, according to Jiva Goswami in Tattva Sandarbha. So if you look at everything in the world, its existence is contingent on other factors. It is not self-existing. Like our body depends on so many other factors in order to exist. Whether you take an evolutionary biology stance or whatever, there's so many factors that require that our existence is contingent upon. And we have prior causes. So if you keep studying, what prior causes, you keep stretching it back. Well, what's the cause of that? And then you find out that, well, what's the cause of that? And when you find out that, well, what's the cause of that? You can just keep asking that, like the little kids, when we were children, we kept saying why. And the parents, I only tried that one time with my mom, and I learned a very valuable lesson. Don't annoy the mom. But you can actually, it's fair game. It's a fair question. What's the cause of that? So everything in the material world is contingent existence. Its existence depends upon prior causes. And if you keep investigating those prior causes, finally you come to the question, where does existence come from itself? Like, say you have a secular mind, so you keep asking why. So finally you come to the Big Bang, or some singularity from which everything, is manifesting. So speculation they offer. But then where did that singularity come from? That is also a fair question. From where that singularity has come. So if you keep stretching it back, finally you come to the point of, why is there existence instead of no existence? Right? Why is there anything whatsoever? And that is the mysterious question. This question is not easy to answer. So then that is God. So God is he from whom all other existences are dependent upon. So he is self-existing, which means he's an uncaused cause. You either accept that or you have to accept the infinite regress of causes. Those are the two options when you come to deal with this question of existence. If you think existence is always contingent, then it has to be an infinite regress of contingent causes, or there has to be an uncaused cause. So both of anyway, either way, you may not be able to know by direct perception which one it is, but theistic people will accept there is an uncaused cause, and he is the cause of existence itself. And from him, everything else is coming into existence. So that is Swayambhuva or Advaya. Advaya means he is the self-existent reality, and all other existing realities depend upon him. That is the other meaning of Advaya. That's why I said non-dual, because the existence of other things are grounded in his existence. So they're not different from him, because if he were not there as the ground of being, then those other things cannot exist whatsoever. So that is the other meaning of the word Advaya. So he is self-existent, and all other existences are grounded in him. These are the two meanings of the word Advaya Gyantattva. Just as the heat is grounded in fire, it cannot exist without the presence of fire whatsoever. So there's the meaning of Swayambhuva or Advaya Gyantattva. So Namahad Hade Swayambhuve. So you are that self-existent reality. And then he says Paraya. So the word Paraya means transcendent. So and Srila Prabhupada in his translation, and I guess he's following Sri Vishnu's commentary. The word Paraya means transcendent, and it means that he's beyond the jiva, he's beyond Maya, and he's beyond the products of Maya. So this is the meaning of transcendence. How? Avitata anubhutaye. So avitata anubhutaye means one whose realization is correct. Or one whose realization is true. Avitata anubhutaye. The word anubhuta or anubhava means one who is able to have the realization. Sometimes just like realization of God is called anubhava. No, that's not the word. I was looking for another word. Like bhakti, paresha, anubhava, virakti. Right? 3 things happen if you do bhakti. So the first one is bhakti, the second one is paresha, anubhava. So anubhava is a word that's used for like realization. So avitata anubhutaye, his vision or realization is true. I have no idea of the sense here so much. In Sri Vishwanath's commentary, he says the Lord is transcendence because his realization is true. So I really don't really know how those two were connected exactly. If I had to speculate, avitata anubhutaye. When it comes to jiva, when it comes to the jiva and Maya, well, Maya is not conscious or it's inert. So when it comes to the jiva, his vision is eclipsed by Maya, as as I quote often, Yasamohita jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manyate anartam takritam chapi padite. Y'all should be knowing this verse by now. I quote it all the time. So the jiva's awareness is eclipsed by Maya, but the Lord's is not. So avivitata anubhutaye. So his vision is true or correct because Maya cannot eclipse him, because Maya is his own power, his own potency. So just as fire cannot, or you can say just as heat cannot burn fire, so also that which is coming from the Lord cannot overpower him or overwhelm him. So avitata anubhutaye, that's going to be my speculation here. It's not clear. Prabhupada doesn't focus on this aspect at all, his purport. And Sri Vishwanath just says, the Lord is transcendent, which means above Jiva Maya and its products. Why? Because his vision is true. Okay. So next, this is our basis to the Swayambhuva, the self-existing reality. So now the rest of the words are just basically adjectives qualifying that self-existent reality. So the second line here says, Gunatraya bhasane mita bhandave. So he is the bhandave, means the controller or the instigator of Gunatraya bhasa. Gunatraya bhasa refers to the jiva who is having an appearance of the gunas when in Prakriti, right? The jiva, we look like we're products of Maya. So that is Gunatraya abhasa, means having a semblance of the 3 gunas. So this is a phrase, I guess, that refers to the jivas. we are looking like we're composed of gunas. So, and nimitta here refers to the Maya Shakti. So, Bandave, the Lord is the instigator or the controller of these two Shaktis, right? They come from the Supreme Lord. The example given is like the sunshine and the reflection of sunlight, right? So, the Lord, the Advaya Gyan Tattva, the Supreme Lord, he is like the um, condensed effulgence in the core of the sun. And his internal energy is like the sun globe itself or sun disk. I think Bhagavatam says sun is a disk, not a globe. So we're going to stick with that. So the sun disk. And then the sunshine is there is like Jiva Tattva, and the reflection of sunlight is like Maya Tattva, right? So there's a Lord and then his three energies. So the core of the sun disk itself, internal energy, sunshine, Jiva Shakti, and the reflection of sunlight, Maya Shakti. So for Jiva and Maya, they exist outside of the Lord, right? They don't exist inside. Just like sunshine and the reflection of sun exists outside of the sun, doesn't exist inside the sun, and its existence is dependent on the sun. And they are seen when the sun is not directly seen. So these four parts. Okay, so the difference between Maya Shakti and Jiva Shakti is Jiva is conscious, whereas Maya is an inert potency. So that is the difference between the sunshine and the reflection of sunlight in the example. But in both cases, Bandave, the Supreme Lord, is the instigator and the regulator of these two energies. They come from him. Okay, that's clear. Adrishta Dhamne. Adrishta Dhamne means the Lord is not seen by people in this world. Why? Gunatatta Buddhibe. Because their intelligence is preoccupied with the guna tattva, the tattvas of the gunas. So they do not know the Lord who is beyond the gunas naturally. As Krishna says in Gita, Tribher Gunamayer Bhavar Ibhi Sarvamidam Jaga Mohitam na Abhijananti Mam Ebhya Param Avyayam. So he says that the jivas are preoccupied with these three gunas and he's above them. So they do not know him because he's above them and they're all into the gunas. I'm beginning with the body and mind and then the sense objects. So we're just playing around with that all the time. So we can't see anything beyond that. That's why Yanisha Sarabhutanam Yasham Jagrati Samyami. What is the time? What is nighttime for common people? It's a time of awakening for the self-control. So we are asleep to the reality beyond the three gunas. And the time of awakening for the conditioned souls. What is the time of awakening? These guna tattva. We're very awake to that. Whether it's our, extensions of ourselves in the form of our family members running around here and there, and our wife, our kids, our in-laws, our friends, and our bosses, and we're really attentive to that. Or it's our computer and our phone, which is very popular one today. Very absorbed in the guna tattva. So the more the intelligence gets absorbed in the guna tattvas, the more dull it becomes. It cannot understand anything subtle. What to speak of God? God is extremely subtle because it's interior to consciousness itself. But you forget that, just subtle, like abstract ideas that are material in nature, that becomes harder for people to understand because the more we engage with the sense objects, the more dull-headed we become. That's why it's so easy to cheat people today, because it's very dull because of too much of the engagement with the sense objects. We've become jada, just like them. The sense objects are jada. So the more we engage with them, we also become jada. Can't remember a thing. Just like I always say, when I was in high school, I must have had at least 50 to 100 numbers memorized easily, because there was no smartphones that time. And even when I was in high school, I think I got my first cell phone when I was either sophomore or junior year of high school, my mom bought. And they, of course, the numbers are saved in the phone, but somehow or other, it wasn't like smartphone style. So somehow I remember committing at least 50 numbers to memory, if not more. Of course, that might have been a little bit extraordinary because I was doing the chess and, I was always drilling the memory. It was like a muscle that I was always working all the time throughout my high school life. But anyway, a lot of them. Now I can't remember a thing. It's just like I know my mom's number because that's been the same for like ever. And I know my number for my cell phone, and that's it. And even when I try to learn other numbers these days, I tried it a couple of times. Like someone will say, "Oh, my number is this." I'm like, "Can you say that again?" And then they'll say 3 digits, and I was like, "Can you say the other part?" Then they'll say the next 3 digits. Can you say the other part? Just so dull headed now. It's embarrassing, actually. Luckily, I'm still able to learn shlokas decently. That's the only hope. I still have hope because of that. Otherwise, guna tattva buddhi, if the intelligence keep engaged with the guna tattva, become very dull. You can't understand anything. Abstract, what to speak of God, which is like, the superlative in terms of abstract reality. So he is a drishta damne for the people of this world. And the last phrase here, nivritta manaya. Nivritta manaya means he is unable to be measured. Um, of course, because of his transcendence. How can you measure anything? How do you measure something that's infinite? And how do you measure something that is having, um, who exists in a different ontological category than the things that you are accustomed to measuring, like the sense objects? So he is nivritta manaya. He is unable to be measured. So this is the nature of the Supreme Lord Swayambhuva. So my obeisances on to such a Lord. Okay, I'm going to read the translation here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the illusory energy, paraya, and the physical categories it produces, right? He possesses the potency for unfailing knowledge and supreme willpower, and he is the controller of the living entities and the illusory energy. The conditioned souls who have accepted this material manifestation as everything could not see him, for he is above the evidence of an experimental knowledge. Self-evident and self-sufficient. That's how Prabhupada translates Swayambhuva. Self-evident and self-sufficient. He is not caused by any superior cause, right? Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai. And in Prabhupada's purport, he mostly only focuses on the adrishta damne line, that the living entities cannot know him, especially if they're preoccupied with the gunas. And nivritta manaya, he's not able to be measured. So he calls this verse from Brahma Samhita about the yogis, even if they drill their breath and practice trying to see the Lord, they practice the samadhi for thousands and thousands of years, still they cannot even see the toenail of the Supreme Lord. So he is nivritta manaya. That's the only thing that Prabhupada largely focuses on here in this purport. Okay, we're going to try one more verse here. So you see there's a lot of stuff going on in these verses. So nayasya sakyam purushovati sakyu sakavasan samvasata puresmin gunayata gunina vyakta drishtis tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. So tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. So my obeisances unto you, the Mahaishaya, the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Lord. Nayasya sakyam purusho avaiti. So here he's saying that the Lord is the friend of the jiva. Purusha here is referring to the jiva. So yasya sakyam, whose friendship or whose fraternity, na avaiti, is not known by the purusha. So the Supreme Lord is called as the friend of the living entity. He is a friend of the living entity for, a couple of reasons. Number one, our existence, as we already mentioned by saying the Lord is Swayambhuva, is grounded in his existence. So we exist because of his friendship, basically. because of him. So in this sense, he is our friend. He is also called as a friend because he gives the facilities by which we can enjoy or pursue, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So this is indicated here, Vyakta Drishti. So, well, there's Vyakta Drishtis meaning something else too. Anyway, one of the meanings here is that he manifests the faculties by which we can have perception in this world. So the faculties such as Buddhindriya Manoprana, Jananam Asrija Prabhu, Matrarcha Cha Bhavarta Cha, Atmane Akalpanaya Cha. This verse is the second verse of the chapter of the prayers of the personified Vedas. So I quote it quite a bit. Buddhindriya Manoprana. So Buddhi, Indriya, Mano, Prana. These are the faculties by which the jivas can perceive things in this world and then pursue things in this world, right? So he says, Jagannath Astrajat Prabhu. This is generated by the Prabhu. The Prabhu has given these faculties. We've not made them. We've not made all these faculties by which we can pursue matter. The Prabhu has given them. And Matrartam Cha Bhavartam Cha, Atmane Kalpanaya Cha. So these four terms basically refer to Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, not breaking them down so much, but they basically refer to Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So he is given the faculties by which the jivas can pursue Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha as they like. So that is his friendship. And the faculties we have, and even our awareness of them, that is also not direct. That is due to his kindness also. Our consciousness, of course, is dependent on the Supreme Lord's awareness, first of all. And even when we want to move or pursue things in this world, we get the desires, then those things are ultimately controlled by the Supreme Lord, right? So that is the criticism of Krishna Bhagavad Gita, for example, when he says, what is that? Pakritihi kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartahaviti manyate. The jiva is veritably foolish because he thinks he's doing things that are actually done by Prakriti. But Prakriti itself is a contingent reality, depending on the regulation of the Supreme Lord. So he is ultimately the fifth and final factor of all action in this world. Krishna says there are 5 factors of action. And the last one is Daiva, is him. He is the final factor. So in this way, he is our friend. But his friendship is not known. So the jivas think that they are accomplishing everything without him in this material world. So they do not appreciate his friendship. Also, what is that verse? Sarvasha chaham hridi sanivishto matagyanamapohanamcha. From him comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So in this way, his friendship is given in so many ways. But we don't appreciate that. We have ingratitude because of our ignorance of his kindness. Just like, I don't know. I can't think of a good example. I'm going to say, just like sometimes the parent is doing something for the child, but the child doesn't perceive that the parent is doing that. So he thinks that he's doing it. I'm trying to think of an example of that. But I can't. It's just like, for example, this is a bad example, by the way. But suppose the parent is picking up the kid and moving around so he can feel like he's flying, like Superman, like the toddler, very young. So he doesn't know the father is doing that. So he may think that, oh, I am flying. But actually that flying is being done really by the father. But the child doesn't appreciate that. So he thinks, I am flying. And so he has ingratitude for what the father's doing. Or here's a better example. It's more practical. The child is living in the house. When he goes to the refrigerator, food is there. The heat is there. Hot water is on and so on. And that is being maintained by the father. Of course, we have to say mother now, otherwise people will accuse of misogyny. So they're together, they're maintaining, but the child doesn't really appreciate that. No, he just sees that it's there somehow, other it's always there. So he just takes it for granted. In this way, he has ingratitude due to his ignorance. So maybe something like that. We don't see how our very existence and awareness and the faculties we use to pursue things, all of this is given by him. So he's our friend, but we don't see that. So he says here, na avaiti. Na yase sakyam purusho avaiti. We don't know his friendship, his fraternity. Sakyu sakabhasam some vasata pudesman. He is situated as a friend in the material body along with the living entity. As Prabhupada reminds us of some Upanishadic statements, which describes the super soul and living entity as two birds sitting in the tree of the material body, and one bird, the jiva, eating the fruits of the tree, some bitter, some sweet. And the other bird is just watching that bird. So the super soul is existing in that way, but he is not known. Just like in the, what was that? Allegory from the fourth canto, Puranjana. So Puranjana had one Brahmin friend whose name was Abhiknata, right? The unknown one. So that was a reference to the super soul. So Gunayata Gunino. So this is just like the sense objects not being able to know the senses which reveal them, right? For example, sound does not know the sense of hearing, which is able to hear sound, right? So guna here, guna yata gunino. So the guna here refers to the sense objects, and gunino refers to the senses which know those sense objects. So the sense objects do not know the senses, but the senses, quote, know or reveal the sense objects. So God is existing like that in relationship to the jivas. So we are like the sense objects, and God is like the sense. So just as the sense object cannot know the sense, so the jiva is not able to know the Supreme Lord. Yata, just like that. He is unknown in this world. Vyakta drishti, even though he's manifesting all the faculties by which we can know this world, still with those faculties and with our own awareness, we're not able to know him. So my obeisance is unto you, the Supreme Lord Maheshaya. A nice verse also. I'll read the translation here. As the sense objects, form, taste, touch, smell, and sound cannot understand how the senses perceive them. So the conditioned soul, although residing in his body along with the super soul, cannot understand how the supreme spiritual person, the master of the material creation, directs his senses. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that supreme person, who is the supreme controller. So, and there will be more glories of the absolute truth described. So we'll pause there. I might go a little slow with these verses because I've always wanted to learn the Hamsaguya prayers because I think they're very nice prayers to offer. So this might be my chance to go through these verses and also learn them simultaneously. They're very, very nice verses. We're explaining so many ideas in our philosophy. And they're, yeah, just nice otherwise also. Okay, chat box says, I was thinking Ajamil plays bhakti secondary to his Vedic rituals, karma kanda, and thus committing the eighth offense. So he was offender, but because he did not commit any specific offense to the name, Bhakti Devi still gave him the result of his karma kanda. But then he gave up his karma kanda due to his being engaged in a sinful life. And with that, the secondary bhakti was also gone. And along with that, the offense was also gone. Then when he chanted, it was without offense. That's the story we understand. Yesterday, we were sharing this with a devotee, and he had this question that if someone is a pious Hindu who every year goes to Tirupati Balaji, shave his head, chant, give charity, but when he comes back, he eats meat, continues sinful material life, but at the same time doesn't give up his yearly bhakti. So he keeps both material and a little bhakti life alive. So he doesn't commit any offense per se, except the sin of killing animals. Well, that's a different thing. It's not an offense, it's a sin. So how can bhakti or Krishna be pleased? Oh, Krishna's inherently pleased by bhakti, right? So samsudaya haritoshana tasmad ekana manasa. What is that? Tasma ekana manasa. Uttama shloka something. Shrotavya krititavyascha. Dehash something. Pujash nityada. So ata pumbir dvija shreshtas varnashrama vibhagashaha. Swanushti tasha dharmasya samsada haritoshana. So the whole purpose of varnashram dharma is to please Hari. So since Hari is pleased by bhakti, tasma, therefore, ekana manasa, with one mind, just do bhakti. Bhagavan satotapati. That's the next line. So why struggle with varnashram dharma? Just with one mind, do bhakti yoga, characterized by shrotavya kititavya shah, hearing, chanting, remembering, puja, deity worship. You just do that bhakti yoga always to the Lord. So he is inherently pleased by bhakti. So if you do sin, he is not sinning on the strength of his bhakti, so that's not offense. He's just an ignorant person. It sounds like from the example. It's just an ignorant person doesn't know anything. So somehow or other, he came to be attracted to this act of bhakti. So he is benefited by that. The Lord is very satisfied by that bhakti, because that is the nature of the Lord. Bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. That even if an elephant offers his obeisances, no, he is also in tamagun, he is also in ignorance. But bhaktya tutosha bhagavan. Bhagavan is pleased by that bhakti. And so the sin thing is going on. So that person may be compared to Ajamil, who was also sinning after chanting and not having heavy effect. But we cannot say for sure, of course. We don't know all the details of this individual, but the Lord certainly knows. And certainly we can say that by that act of bhakti, he is pleased, especially if it is not informed by any sort of karmic condic notion or anything like that. Maybe he just grew up seeing something like that. So he is also doing, but he has no specific conception. So that person may be a very fortunate person in that sense then. Shivani says, reflecting on all the prayers we have read so far, prayers by Vedas, Dhruva, Prajapati, Gajendra, Bhishma, Kunti, etc., it all talks about glorifying Krishna to be the cause of all causes and beyond the modes of material nature and illusory energy. How do I personally feel attracted to these prayers? They all seem redundant and monotonous. I know my conditioning, anarthas, and hard heart, I am not able to feel blissful here in the prayer section of Srimad Bhagavatam. Any help from me, appreciate these sections would be appreciated. Well, what help could, because you have jaundice of ignorance, Shakrishna Nama Charitadi Satapa Vidya Pitopatasha Rasanashana Ruchikadu. So the sweet thing you are tasting is bitter, right? That is what Rupa Goswami is telling us about ourselves. So the solution he gives for that is the sweet candy only, right? The sweet candy that is tasting bitter is the medicine. So we're hearing this as our medicine. And later when our jaundice is cured, then it will become our food. So what is that? Kentuadinam? No. Anudinam. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the verse now. Gotta freshen up my Upadeshamrita. So if you do this daily, anudinam, with assiduously, which means with care and attention and persistence, then the disease will go away. You can taste. That's my general answer from Shastra. I think as maybe a point of logic, I think because you can say, in a sense, oversaturated. For example, existence is a great mystery. Existence itself is a mystery. Why is there something instead of nothing? That is actually a mystery, but because you can say oversaturated with existence on a moment-to-moment basis, we forget how mysterious it is, right? And that's the same is true of consciousness, right? Even the relationship of consciousness to existence. For example, can something exist without someone being aware of it? Of course, that's just true logically. Like there could be some table in Timbuktu and I'm not aware of it, but it has existence. But I mean to say that, is there any world in which there's an existence which no one is aware of? That's not possible. So somehow there's this relationship between consciousness and existence that's inseparable. And it's mysterious. But because we're oversaturated with it on a moment-to-moment basis, the mystery of it becomes lost to us. And we take it for granted. As it is said, familiarity breeds contempt. So the same is true of these prayers, perhaps. You're hearing similar elements in all the prayers, and they're very familiar to you. So because of that familiarity, you are having contempt a little bit. You're not appreciating the glory of someone offering their heart. Now, I would say if you want to appreciate, you go and try to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. And see, compare your offering to these prayers that are mentioned here in Srimad Bhagavatam. When you go and offer prayers, or even forget offering prayer, just write a journal as if like a letter to Bhagavan, and compare your letter to Kunti's prayers or Prahlad's prayers or Dhruva's prayers, etc., etc. Then you will come to understand how special these personalities' prayers are. When you see the contents of your own awareness and you try to give expression to them on the paper or, articulate them externally, and you see that it's lacking so much tattva and it's lacking also so much feeling, then you can come to appreciate. I also say as a final thing that because we're not offering these prayers, we don't practice stutis as part of our devotional service, where you try to offer these prayers with a devotion to your Thakurji. You have some deity or some Shila you worship, and you sit down and offer these prayers for their pleasure. Therefore, you do not have appreciation for them. I was hearing a story recently. I forget from whom, maybe from, I think Ujjwala was telling me this. Madhavananda was saying there was some sadhu there in Puri, and he had one Shila that he was using as a, what do you say? A kutasta. Kutasta means like a word that we hear in Gita and Shastra. It means like the unmovable, I don't know what's it, it's like table that is used to forge like weapons or metal. So there was one big Shila apparently that he was using as a kutasta to build the like metal. So he was like beating the hard metal on this Shila. So one Brahmana had come to see this Shudra doing this work on the Shila, and he was like, what an ignorant fellow. He had a little contempt there. But he didn't like try to embarrass this guy. He just said, let me buy this kuta stuff from you. We'll name your price, any price, we'll give it. So he gave it, the Brahmana offered some big price. He took the kuta stuff, the Shila, which was being used as a kuta stuff. He took it. And then after one night, he took it, he bathed it, oiled it, he did all the proper worship, very nice worship he was doing. And then he went to sleep, and then he had a dream. So the Shila came to him and said, thank you very much for worshiping me so nicely, but can you take me back to that Shudra? And take me back to him only. I want to be with him. And the Brahmana was very bewildered. So he said, but why? He's using you as one kuta stuff, beating the metal on you. How can you go back to him? So then the Lord told him, he says, yes, that is true. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable, but he sings my favorite prayer from Gita Govinda. And I want to hear that prayer from him every day. He is singing every day, and I'm liking that. My favorite prayer from Gita Govinda, he is singing every single day. And I want to hear that prayer from him. So please bring me back. I will, he may be using me as kuta stuff, but I'll tolerate that because he is singing this nice prayer to me every day, and I want to hear that prayer from him. So of course the Brahmana was astonished by that. I was just told this recently because Madhavananda shared this with some devotees. I was very touched to hear this particular story, how the Lord is, not that we also, you know, imitate, but it goes to show how much he is appreciating the hearts of these devotees whose prayers you find hackneyed because of having the jaundice of ignorance. The Lord is so much appreciating these prayers that he would tolerate being beat with the metal just to hear these prayers from his devotees. So it is a very common practice amongst Vaishnavas to recite these stutis to the Supreme Lord, because who knows if the Lord will be pleased by our own offerings. Of course, he's pleased to whatever degree, but these prayers were offered with the pure bhav, the bhav bhakti that we aspire to. These prayers were immersed with that. So when the Lord is reminded of that, what great happiness we can bring to the Supreme Lord. Just like Mahaprabhu, he would go into the ecstasy. And then Swarup Damodar Goswami would immediately start reciting verses from the 10th canto Bhagavatam, Gopi Gita, Pranaya Gita, Venu Gita, Viraha Gita. I don't know about that one, maybe. Yugo Gita. And immediately the Lord would go into happiness, saying, Pataparudra, when he finally got the strategy how to get darshan the Lord from the Vaishnavas, then he was in Puri, and Mahaprabhu was in ecstasy in the garden next to Gandicha. He was massaging the Lord's body and singing Gopi Gita to the Lord. And then he came across the famous verse, Tavakatamritam Tata Jivanam, and so on. And the Lord, the last line, Bhuvi Grinantiye Buridajana, those who, sing these glories, the Katamritam of Krishna, they are the most magnanimous, kind people in this world. Buridajana. And then Mahaprabhu said, Burida, 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 saying that of Pataparuja Maharaj for singing that prayer to him. So maybe this is also the other reason we don't appreciate, because we don't offer these prayers to our Thakur, to our Supreme Lord, who is very much pleased by the bhava of his devotees. This is in one sense, the ultimate expression of non-enviousness. To know that, wow, my Lord is so pleased by these prayers that let me offer these prayers to the Lord. I have my own prayers I like to offer, and whatever, they may be nice to whatever degree because they're from the heart and authentic. But I know he was very, very pleased with these prayers, and so let me offer these prayers. This is the ultimate expression of non-enviousness in a sense. And then if you are not envious, you can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsara namsatam. Right? The Srimad Bhagavatam, this paradharma, is understood by those who are non-envious, nirmatsarya. And nirmatsara namsatam. So offering the stutis is like an expression of non-enviousness. And so if you will do that, allowing your mind to enter into all the subtle meanings and nuances that are certainly there if you allow yourself to study them, then you'll be able to understand, and then you'll appreciate, then you'll cry at some point. Okay, so Shivani says, you remember most of the verses which are to be quoted at the right time. You always have a reference ready, which is extraordinary. Krishna's mercy. When this is called Guhyam Akyati Prichati. So when devotees are hearing and chanting together, Modayanta Parasparam Katayam Tashramam Nityam Tushanti Charamanti Cha. Then Super Soul will help out that whole process. Okay, say this thing now. Now you ask this question. Now you say this thing. And that way it's like magic. It's actually like magic. So I used to always say this. There was one year I was saying this like for the whole year, that Krishna Katha is a living entity. So only the hearer and chanter has to be having the right mood of friendship toward one another and toward God. And then he'll do the magic through the the Harikatha that is will do the magic. Okay, now you ask this one. Parikshit Maharaj asked this question. And then Shukadeva Goswami give an answer like this. And that way it's like magic. And it excites the whole assembly. Just like the Kumaras. Is it the Kumaras? They say this thing too. Who do they say this thing to Prithu Maharaj. There's such a nice verse. This is from 4th Canto, chapter 22, verse 19. I actually need to commit this verse to memory because I do reference it quite a bit. But the verse says, Sagama kalu sadhunam ubayesham chasamata yat sambhashana samprashna sarvesham atunotisham. And so when there's a congregation of devotees, Sangama kalu sadhunam. So when there's nice congregation of devotees, ubayesham chasamataha yat sambhashana samprashna. So there are questions, some prashna and answers, and there are some bhashana, their discussions are conclusive not only to them, but to everyone around them. And sarvesham vitanotisham. And therefore, the meeting of such devotees brings happiness to everyone. Sarvesham vitanotisham. It expands the happiness of everyone. So that is the magic of Guhyamakati Prichati. If people are having the right friendship with one another and with God, then some magic can happen. Otherwise, not. This is one reason, perhaps, why a lot of our classes in the temples can be a little bit dull or hollow, feel a little bit hollow, because the speaker and the hearers may not have the right friendship with one another. And when I say friendship, I mean like a sort of regard, a reverence, and appreciation, and ultimately an affection. So if that isn't there, then Harikatha, I'm like, no, I'm not inspired. But if they have the right, friendship with each other, and then of course with God at the apex of the triangle, then you can see some magic can happen. Okay, next Sham Gabi says, but if devotees tell him still he does it, he doesn't still give it up even after knowing. Now he is ignorant. I don't know where that comment is from. This must have been in the live thing. Agape.
Prabhu, it's from the first. Prabhu, sorry, it's from the first question that I asked about this devotee who is doing both sinful life and the bhakti life together. So you said that he's ignorant, like because he's just doing like an ignorant person. So I just made a comment that this devotee actually tried to preach to him and he still is not giving it up. So he's saying now his argument was now he's not ignorant because I told him. So he's still continuing both the things. So how do you reconcile?
Yeah, I don't reconcile. That is between him and God. The devotee is upset that the person, not upset, whatever he is, disappointed or incredulous or whatever it is he may be feeling, that the person is not giving it up, but he should also feel a little disturbed that he was not able to inspire him to give it up. We always, just like here in Bhakti Center, they hired some people, and when Bhakti Center was just opening up back in April, so they had job offerings, and so many non-devotees also, applied. So a couple of non-devotees got hired. Now, a few other devotees, they're a little bit complaining about that. Oh, they're not devotees. They're not devotees. Even I'm like, well, are they doing their work properly? So for the most part, they appear to be doing the work properly. So why you're complaining that they're not devotees? Well, because they should be devotees. So why don't you make them devotees? No one can just become a devotee after all. Someone becoming devotee is the gift of a sadhu's magic, so to speak, his power, his ability to communicate internal energy into the heart of the person. So if you upset someone's not a devotee, that's not on them. They have beginningless ignorance. Of course, they're not a devotee. The only way they can become a devotee is if you make them a devotee. So if you don't have enough Shakti to make them a devotee, why are you not upset with yourself? Why are you taking it out on them? They can't help but not be a devotee. So you have to make them a devotee, but we don't have enough Shakti to make devotees. So we should be disappointed with ourselves. So whatever's happening to that individual, who knows? That is between him and God. Yes, he may be knowing now a little bit, but he wasn't convinced because of whatever reasons. Part of which may be that that particular devotee preaching to him didn't have the Shakti to, communicate internal energy or enough of it so that that person will give it up. So that's just between him and I. Is he an operati? Is he this or that? Who can know specifically? It's very hard to say in general. What we heard from Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in that long commentary is to help us assimilate how glorious the holy name actually is. So he's given nice commentary in that regard. But because so many of these things are happening in the subtle realm beyond sense perception, it's very hard to identify precisely what's happening with individuals and how the holy name is responding to them. So I leave that with God. That is not my realm to analyze so much. Agapi says, I think it's interesting the Pracheta's son will go on to offend their guru, Daksha. So much for that dynasty culture. Will go on to, the Pracheta's son was Daksha, right? He will go on to offend their guru. Oh, are you saying Narada Muni? That happened actually in a previous.
I'm saying Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva.
Because remember, he was their guru before they did their austerities. And then Daksha will go on to offend him at the beginning of the fourth canto.
That Daksha in the beginning of the fourth canto is different from this Daksha. Well, they're the same Daksha, but that Daksha in the fourth canto appeared in the first Manu's period, Swayambhuva Manu. So this Daksha that we're hearing about now is the same Daksha after he got goat head. So he gave up that body because the goat head was an insult to him. It was a little bit hard to swallow. So he gave up that goat body and then he took birth in the Chakshusha Manvantar. So that was like 6 or 7 Manvantars later. That actually came up earlier in the first passage. I forgot that comment. Then this morning I was thinking about it. I was like, anyway, not so important. So it's interesting that you asked this question now. So it is the same Daksha, but in different Manvantar periods.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, like in today's prayer, the offering of gratitude to all the faculties given to us by the Lord. Yes. Could you expand on the phrase you said Bhagavad is interior to consciousness? Yeah, this means like the soul is interior to the body. So the Supreme Lord is interior to consciousness in that sense. Of course, he's inside, outside, right? Because we come from God and it's in God that we exist and it is to him we return. So he's inside, outside. By interior to consciousness, I mean more subtle, basically. So we can't know him like we know other things that are outside of ourselves and revealed by our consciousness. So we can't know God in that way. That's kind of what I meant by interior to consciousness.
Thank you, Prabhu. Did you see my question right above that about the Hamsaguya prayers, like the name?
Oh, no. Does Hamsaguya mean confidential swan? I guess its literal meaning is that. Any significance to that name for these prayers? I wouldn't know, actually. It's a good question. So this is a good exercise. Oh, that's a precious pastime. Who know if the Lord will be pleased with our personal prayers? Okay, Mukunda's got something. Yeah, facts.
Hare Krishna. I'm sorry for the background. Yeah, so I was just on this discussion about being attracted to prayers. I was just wondering what because I also feel similarly, like a lot of I think one thing is that majority of the prayers in the Bhagavatam seem to be more towards Vishnu, like, and that whatever the mood of service or the relationship is that devotees have with Vishnu as compared to Krishna specifically. And these prayers that come from associates of Krishna, or I guess glorifications, seem to hit home a little bit more, or they seem more attractive. Okay. And I was just wondering, is there something wrong with that, with being attracted more to prayers to or glorifications of Krishna than prayers to Lord Vishnu? Or
Why is there something wrong with that? That sounds glorious.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like yeah, I don't know.
We are Krishna's bhaktas, so we already have a prejudice. And that prejudice is our glory, or our good fortune, I should say, rather, or our privilege, a privilege that was conferred upon us. So there's nothing wrong there at all. Of course, I would say, I think one of the big reasons the lack of attraction to these other prayers because you don't study them for yourself. If you study these prayers for yourself, they're just amazing prayers, actually. And the very fact, I personally have an attraction to wanting to learn as many stutis as possible. I want to learn a lot of the 10th canto. I don't know if I'll accomplish this because I'm a little lazy, but I do have a desire to learn a lot of the 10th canto stories, just shloka by shloka, and just have them shlokas in my head, regularly. And then just it's about you can say 39 chapters, basically dealing with Krishna's Braja Leela. And then you just circle, one day you recite one chapter and the next day, and then after 39, you just keep reciting. I have a desire like that. And then desire to learn as many other stutis in the Bhagavatam as possible, because these stutis have so much explanatory power. Every stuti, when you have to talk about tattva, so much can be brought out from these stutis. If you have to talk about bhava, so many things will be brought out in these stutis. And if you study them, they have just extraordinary illuminating power, not only in terms of tattva or knowledge, but also in terms of spirit, of love. So because you don't study, you do a little bit of hearing, and then after hearing, you forget. So then you go back and read another study, you say, oh, they're saying same thing. That's because you forgot. So many elements, so many subtleties. Forgetfulness is how our disease is described sometimes. So if you study, you'll see.
Very true. Very true.
When I started studying the stutis, I was just like Dhruva. Someone mentioned Dhruva's prayers to Krishna. So we were doing Dhruva's, for Bhagavad Shravan here in Bhakti Center a year ago, or maybe almost 2 years ago. I don't remember now. We were doing, I think 2 years. I always forget 2020 wasn't really a year. So it's like just got deleted. So this must have been in 2019. We were doing Dhruva's pastime. So we got to this, stutis chanted by Dhruva. And I remember, so I had to give class here for Bhagavad Shravan. So I studied those prayers for the class. And it was just like amazing. I was like, wow, this is so much insight. So if you sit with them and not just hear them superficially, you'll find so much nectar there. And all of the prayers will remind you of Krishna. Like when I was studying Dhruva's prayers, there were so many points. I was like, this seems a little esoteric, that the full import of the prayer actually reminded you of Krishna and not just Vishnu. So that is there. But anything you do shallowly will be hackneyed to you. Only if you really try to dive deep, you'll discover so many wonderful things. So that is always a recommendation. And that is our process, basically. Tasmanikana manasa. Dive deep into this ocean of love for Krishna in the form of the heart expressions of the devotees of Krishna. Man, you'll find it very nice, I'm sure. All right, I'll read the last comments here and then we'll go. It's already 9:30 today. So I forget the verse that one devotee quoted with whom we were having a discussion. I guess Queen Kunti's section, Jamaishwarya. Purport, but Srila Prabhupada mentions that only by pure chanting the sins are removed. But we heard from VCT that the offenseless chanting, even though not directly aimed toward the Lord, by Ajamil was enough. So how do we take VCT words? True, but not true. Well, it was enough for what? So it was enough for getting out of the sins. So he had Namabas. Yeah, so anyway, Prabhupada said that here, but he must have said in other purports in Ajamil's story that just by chanting Namabas, sins were removed, because that was the point being made there. So in that way, people be cherry picking one little phrase and then try to create whole siddhantas on that. They got to see everything together and then do the reconciliation. Athena says, we can have mercy for this person. He does not have the pious credits to be able to give up meat eating right away. The attachment to senses, holy name will purify. It's a matter of time. Who cares? People are eating meat. So they're here, one devotee, friend of mine, he lives nearby. So he has one roommate, an Asian kid, who's becoming attracted to Krishna consciousness. But my friend is like barely hanging on. And he chants the japa thing, and that's it. And then other time he's just like, I can't, he's in Maya basically. And his friend, his roommate is there also, meat eater, but kind of starting to get into Krishna consciousness. So I go over to hang with them, usually once in a week these days, because they're the only close friends I have around nearby now these days. And when I go over there, I never try to preach to him about anything, about meat eating, this, that, and the other. I just go over there, we hang, we talk. I know when we talk, I bring up the things that I'm preoccupied with, which happens to be a lot of the time Krishna conscious ideas. So he'll ask about Krishna, he's chanting a little bit, and that is very glorious. And gradually, he seems like he's becoming more a devotee. He's become a little attached to me now. So he starts coming to all the for Kartik, he came every single day to offer a lamp to Radha Damodar, even though knows nothing so much. And anytime giving some talk or something, he comes to hear it. So gradually, he getting taste for hearing Hari Katha and doing a little bit of Hari Bhajan. So why should I pressure him about stopping meat eating? He'll stop meat eating at the right time. Devotees be acting like you need to stop sin in order to cultivate bhakti. You don't. Actually, the destruction of sin is the effect of bhakti, not the prerequisite for it. So if you want to live in the monastery, okay, you got to stop, you got to follow the 4 regular principles strictly because you live in monastery. But if someone is just starting to increase their taste for bhakti, then the more they get into that, then the less these things will come up for them. They'll give it up in their own way. So depending on the shakti we have to communicate internal energy into their hearts, then on that strength, they'll give the things up. Why we have to pressure them, make them uncomfortable. All right, I'm gonna read the rest of these things. Yes. So Shivani also says here from 1 to 26, it is said in the Shastra that once by uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of a quantity of sins that he's unable to commit, right? Such is the power of uttering the holy name of the Lord. There is not the least exaggeration in the statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency, but there is a quality to such utterance also. It depends on the quality of feeling. Ajamil had a lot of feeling. Dhruva prayers are my fave, Agape says. Oh, such a great class. Thank you all. Jaya. Yeah, Ajamil had a lot of feeling when he was chanting, especially when the Yamadutas came. He had a lot of feeling that time. Hare Krishna. So that statement is not contradicted by Ajamil's story. It's confirmed by Ajamil's story. Okay, we'll stop here for today. Hariom Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Premanandi Haribo.